Never attribute to malice that which can be explained by stupidity. That's Hanlon's razor. Sometimes also ended with ignorance, incompetence, or error. It's the same concept. Maybe somebody's not intentionally trying to hurt you. They're just dumb. Today's thing I want you to contemplate is that maybe you're just collateral damage. Guys, this is Russell. Welcome back to my channel, The Last Man. If you haven't caught it already, the name of my channel is a reference to a book by Fukuyama called The End of History and the Last Man. I love history, philosophy, political science, economics, and religion. And today I wanted to bring up this book I read a long time ago. A guy named Harris wrote a book called Civilization and Its Enemies. I was very impressed with it, but like a lot of authors, even very intelligent people, they can be knowledgeable, they can have brilliant, unique insights, and then they can come up to terrible conclusions. Harris' book falls in this category. His conclusions is that the enemies of civilization is jihadic Islamic terrorist, which makes total sense because he wrote the book in the wake of 9/11. I'm sure he was profiting off of that. But he knows his history, and the paradigm he sets up stuck with me forever. His basic argument is that the family was the original organizational unit of all humans, which makes total sense, right? Going back to probably before we were ever actually modern humans, we had families, and that was the basic unit of social organization. Then he says a rival model popped up, the adolescent boyhood gang. So group of young males going around terrorizing, making raids, ignoring the family, familial obligations and structures, and creating their own hierarchy and their own loyalties. That evolved into an army, which evolved into the nation state, and he claims eventually evolved into the modern corporation. That always stuck with me, that setup, that paradigm, that there is a conflict. And he says this, there is a natural tension between the two because they're both vying for the same spot, which is going to be the primary model of social organization. And obviously they've evolved to kind of overlap and intertwine with each other, but there is inherent this tension between the two because they're competing for the same spot. You would think by that logic, he could have ended the book quickly by saying the enemy of civilization is the family. But he was wiser than that. I don't think his conclusion about Islamic terrorists doesn't make any sense to me. I forget what leaps of logic he had to make that argument. But I think if you keep that model in mind, you're seeing it nowadays, right? I'm not the first person to say this. There's plenty of other people online saying it in more quick and layman's terms. You know, some people get conspiratorial and say there's some crazy, usually Jewish for some reason, cabal of billionaire pedophiles who are trying to destroy the family. Ironically, if you go read the Bible, look at Genesis, what you see, to me, it's pretty clear, is this obscure tribe of people living on the outskirts of early cities and early civilizations and judging them. And they're basically cleaving to the family structure and judging everything that happens in the cities. And they're taking all of the myths that were circulating around the Middle East at the time and rewriting them into morality tales, always judging the city dwellers. Sodom and Gomorrah, they take the flood of Gilgamesh and turn that into God judging the wickedness of man. They take a man and a woman in a garden with a tree and a snake, a common myth at the time, and they turn that into Adam and Eve and the fall. The Tower of Babel, which is really the Sumerian ziggurat. Everything guys are doing in the cities are bad. They're all the sons of Cain. They're all the bad people. Except, of course, over time in the Bible, you see once these new structures of social organization pop up and kick the crap out of the Israelites, they start to change their tune and start to adopt civilization. Once they become slaves of the Pharaoh and then they get liberated, they find they do want their own territory to call their own. And then not long after that, they start asking for a king of their own. So obviously they are adapting the methods. They are forced to change and adapt. Otherwise, they're going to get wiped out by these new societies, these new civilizations that are organized under a different structure. I think people forget this in the modern age, that the family structure, while nowadays considered a patriarchy, and I believe that's kind of a reworking. It's a hatchet job. It's a smear campaign from the modern telling of things. In the original family, organic family structure, everybody owes everybody. The children owe familial loyalty and obligation to their parents. They answer to the wife answers to the man, and the man answers to the wife. The wife has power. She has soft power that is very effective. The classic setup of man controls commitment and the woman controls access to sex. Everyone has power over everyone. The parents love their children. They're never going to leave them. I think I mentioned it somewhere before in Cabeza de Vaca's Diary of the Native Texans. He talks about how men who have children, they don't leave. So your children hold a place in your heart. You have love for your wife. Your wife has obligations to you. Your children have obligations to both of you. You have obligations to her. Everybody owes everyone in a family. But that's been rewritten as being a patriarchy. And the ironic thing is, it's the other form of organization. The adolescent gang, the army, the nation state, the modern corporation. They are the true top dog hierarchies. Loyalty works differently there. Everything is top-down power. In a boyhood gang, you have the ringleader. In an army, you have the general or the marshal or the supreme allied commander. In every country on earth, you have the premier, the president, the prime minister, or the dictator, or the chairman. And in the modern corporation, you have a CEO. There is a captain of the boat. There is one singular position that is superior to all others. And in theory, it has obligations to its underlings. Supposedly, the king was supposed to be loyal to his subjects. But when you have absolute power, you're not really obligated to do anything for those below you. You can get away with any type of abuse you want. And this is the structure I want you to think about. The idea that there's two rival forms of social organization, and they've both been criticizing each other or outright trying to eliminate each other. And what I see today is civilization getting too big for its britches, where it's actively coming after the family. I'm not the first person to have this thought. There's actually a woman named Dr. Danny Sulikowski. I want to say she's a evolutionary biologist. She's been making the rounds lately. She has a theory that men, you're just collateral damage. I know it seems like society's coming after everything that is masculine and labeling it toxic. Her theory is that this is female against female competition. This is a female, biologically driven mating strategy that is essentially trying to create a population crash so that in the aftermath, particular women have the majority of the gene pool. They're increasing the percentage of their genes in the overall gene pool by convincing other women not to breed. It's an interesting theory. I don't completely agree with it because some of the historical stuff I know clashes with it. But it's fascinating. I think she's onto something. Maybe it requires some revision to fit more cleanly with all the facts we have. But it does seem to me like society is coming after the family. And like I said at the beginning, don't contribute to malice that which can be explained by error, ignorance, or stupidity. These people are about to chop their legs off and call it freedom, not realizing that they're going to bleed out in the process. Family was the original structure of humankind, and civilization was born out of that. That boyhood gang, they were given birth by their mother and their father. So it's no surprise to me that one of the early religions was preaching against the sins of cities and civilizations and this new form of hierarchy and loyalty. And now what you have is a new religion that has popped up that is preaching the benefits of civilization at the expense of the family. And in my take on it, they have two grand temples. They have Hollywood and academia, and their high priestesses are celebrities and academics from the soft social sciences. I'll go after the celebrities first because they're the easier target. These are pretty people living life on easy mode who had to jump into their careers as young as possible while they were still fresh and shiny, and they did not have the time to educate themselves on things that matter, real intellectual academic pursuits. But that does not keep them from running their traps about things they do not understand. They have a platform, they have a microphone, they have a lot of eyeballs, and of course they like attention, so they want to speak freely about every twisted philosophy, belief system they have. I mean, look at how long Scientology has been entrenched in Hollywood. How many of these people belong to that cult? It's ridiculous, and it's nonsense, because these people, they're not malicious, they're just ignorant, all right? They're just uninformed and egocentric, and they like hearing themselves talk about things that they haven't bothered to actually study. It's usually some type of pseudoscience, woo-woo, spiritual, unacademic, not peer-reviewed beliefs in anything crazy. I mean, one of the most recent ones I heard about was this OM movement, which was started by a woman who had a bad childhood. She was sexually molested, and she's encouraging people to do these weird sexual practices with people who aren't their partners. And their biggest endorsement they got was Gwyneth Paltrow. So that just shows you the kind of twisted little cults that pop up that the celebrities can't ascertain and can't distinguish from real things that matter. And then they go and endorse them, and then which gives them all their fans go and follow it because that's what the celebrity's doing. So they're causing harm in that way. And a lot of what they preach is anti-family and anti-natal. The last thing I saw was, I can't think of her name, but the woman from SNL who played on Parks and Rec. She's up there saying how terrible it is to be a mom, how it's the hardest job in the world and it's unappreciated. It's a thankless job. You've heard Oprah say that, like it's the hardest job in the world. Like they're really subtly encouraging against motherhood. They're discouraging motherhood. The other high priestesses of this religion, the other temple they worship at, is academia. Now, the university used to be a trusted institution, but it's getting ideologically captured these days. The hard sciences are safe for now, but they're still under attack. People are trying to politicize things like chemistry and engineering and physics. But the soft sciences, that was much easier for them to get a foothold in, and they're really getting dominance now. It's history, philosophy, social sciences, and especially, of course, psychology. In psychology, you're getting the culture is publish or die, and it's all based on emotions. So all you have to do now is, follow the rules and check the boxes, and you can get those 3 letters behind your name. Just publish a paper with some unique theory. It doesn't have to make sense because it just has to be based on emotions. And then now we give you this degree that bestows upon you the authority to act like you're some type of true intellectual who can go around telling people how they should live their lives and what the more enlightened thought process is. Prime example for me was I read a book by a woman right after my divorce called Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents. Now, again, like a lot of other authors, she's clearly intelligent. She's been educated. She's been through the system. And she has some unique insights, but she has terrible conclusions. I will admit, while I read her book, I saw some behaviors that my parents exhibited that do seem like the show's emotional immaturity. But I was raised with the 10 Commandments, and I still do the 4th one. Honor your father and mother. Your parents aren't perfect. But in this woman's perspective on things, if they were less than perfect parents while raising you, or if they annoy you now, it's totally okay to cut them out of your life. I saw her make the rounds. She did interviews on fairly major platforms, and everyone's applauding her like she's some genius who figured out that selfishness is the more enlightened way. And she says in the book the way that she cut off her own mother because her mother just annoys her too much. And it's not only okay to do that, it's superior to do that. It's enlightened to do that. So not only do you not have to stick with your husband, you can treat your kids like they're a burden, and you don't even have to be loyal to the parents that gave birth to you. And this is with the technically credentialed academics, much less the copycats like certified life coaches or wellness experts or divorce experts, whatever these really strange titles that don't really confer any true acknowledgement of time spent studying real things. Instead, it's all feelings-based. You can get half of these things with just an online application and a few hours of playing around with whatever program they say you have to complete. And now you can go advertising yourself as some type of credentialed person. So let's not forget that PhD to me is not even a true conferment of authority anymore, because all you had to do was publish, come up with a unique theory, talk about your feelings, and then boom, now you're considered a doctorate, you know? So this woman who wrote the book, everyone's applauding her, but I couldn't help but see a sad old woman who's cutting the love out of her life because she's got too much pain. And let's not forget for a minute that the common joke about people who go into psychology are going in because they're messed up in the head and they're trying to figure themselves out. While this woman wrote a book and got a lot of accolades for it, she clearly is missing something crucial that must have come from her own childhood. It's not to say that her mother might not be responsible for some of the damage she incurred, but cutting them out of your life is not the solution. Just like all of these people are preaching against a family, they're going to find out in the long term that they've cut their own throat. They've broken the original structure from which they came, and they're demonizing the family for everything. And like I said, this has been presaged before by authors who saw, I think a lot of them are criticizing the communist regimes and the destruction of the family and this belief in some utopia that we can have this atomized society where sex is given freely, families don't exist, everyone is an individual. But I mean, this utopia is a dystopia, and that's what those books were trying to convey. But we'll see where it heads. This is nothing more than the constant battle that's been going on since the dawn of time between two basic units of human organization, the family and the gang or the army or the nation state or the corporation. And they both need each other. They need to coexist. We're not going back to hunting and gathering, but we're not going to become a brave new world. We're going to be kind of going to war over this. I mean, not a real war. This is a war of intellects. This is a war of logic and feelings and what works. But this is what's playing out. And even though it feels like you're being attacked after your divorce, that all masculinity is being labeled as toxic, you might just be collateral damage. This is not malicious. This is just ignorance. And facts are facts. Facts are stubborn things. The truth will out. You can't go against the true nature of things and not suffer the consequences. We'll see how it plays out. But that's my thought for today, guys. You might just be collateral damage. Don't take it personally. What seems like what might be malicious might just be stupidity. This is Russell, the last man. Take care, guys.